Welcome to Your Story, Our History, a podcast from Londonderry YMCA. I'm Catherine, the project coordinator.
And I'm Hannah, the project archivist. For the past year, we've been on a mission funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund to capture the voices that have shaped this organisation.
We have just celebrated 40 years at our Drumahoe site and are approaching a massive milestone, our 170th anniversary. But history isn't just about dates and buildings, it's about people.
We've invited former and current members, volunteers and staff to sit down with us and share the stories that don't always make it into the history books. These memories make our living archive.
Today we are joined by Adrian Johnston, a man who's been a part of the YMCA for over 30 years, as a rugby player, a board member and a leader. Adrian takes us back to the days of the Infinity Project, where young people took the lead to run some of the most popular discos in the city. He also speaks passionately about the community ethos of the YMCA and how his decades of experience here helped shape the person he is today. We'll also hear about the importance of having a mentor like Willie Lamrock and why Adrian believes you should always have trust in the people who see potential in you.
What is your name?
Adrian Johnston.
Perfect. And tell me a wee bit about yourself now, so your age, your occupation and your hobbies.
Oh wow, age, just turned 51. I am Innovation Commissioner for Belfast. That's a role where we work with communities, academics, government to drive innovation projects that are going to be of benefit to people, whether they improve their lives or improve the economy. I've been doing that for 2 years now, going on to 2 years.
Great.
Hobbies, sport, love sport. That's came from my days at the YM. So love watching sport, love watching the rugby at the weekend, love playing golf. Play golf with some of the old guys I used to play rugby with here as well. Listening to music, walking my dog, just anything that I can relax when I'm not working. Quite happy to do that.
Perfect. So it sounds like you've been involved for a long time then with the YMCA. So how did you initially get involved?
I've been involved with the YM for a very long time. In fact, I stepped down off the board last January when I'd been on the board for 30 years. I've been actually on the board for 30 years. So I was involved when I was a teenager, like many people that sort of come through the YMCA. I started getting involved when I was a teenager in sort of two parts of the YMCA. One was in the rugby. So I played rugby here for many years with the team. I know you had Keith Anderson on. I was kind of a generation and a half maybe after Keith had came through. So we reaped all the benefits of those guys establishing the rugby, and then able to play in like a really great rugby team here and really good quality rugby. And as well as that, I was chairman of Infinity. So I know you've maybe talked about Infinity a few times. So Infinity was a youth project that was established here at the YMCA back around 94 sort of time frame. I was 19 at the time. And it was amazing. You know, it was like for the organisation talking about a youth project that was going to be run by young people, which at that time was kind of really unheard of, especially in an organisation like the YMCA. And I was asked to chair the Infinity board. And that allowed me then to get a position on the main YMCA board. And that sort of just took off from there. So I've been involved with lots of different things at the YM, whether it be on the board, being chair, playing rugby, or pretending to be really cool in Infinity out there in the main hall.
So what was the purpose of Infinity?
It really was that. I mean, so Mark Patterson was here at the time, and it really was about Mark saying, could we establish a youth project that is run by young people, it's governed by young people make all the decisions about this. And it was dance music, it was rave music at the time, right? So it wouldn't have had the best publicity, right? So for an organisation like this to say, yeah, let's do that, that's what young people want, was kind of the motivation for it. And then it just snowballed into this absolutely incredible project that was attracting hundreds of young people to come walking down the streets to this place every Friday night. Give us as individuals, like, there's maybe 16 of us that were involved in the project. Some people are really creative, some people are really talented. Like Andy Moore was the DJ, Paul Temple was sort of the MC, and a few others. Damien Ribet, Lee Allen, myself, you know, sort of, it was a really class mix of people, whether they were creatives or, you know, if they had the ability to run a project, if they had the ability to project manage things. It was just amazing because it was just this mix of really good, talented young people that were able to drive this massive, massive project. So it was kind of established from this whole ethos of, I think the YM has always had, what's the need and how do we help serve that need? And that need at the time was like, how can you harness this particular cultural movement to engage young people? It was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing.
And see, even from the first one, was it really popular or was it more like a slow build-up?
No, it was pretty popular from the word go. You know, it really was. And I think one of the things from that was, I always reflect on this. I think for me, it's been an incredible journey because at the time, it was funded by what was called the Northern Ireland Voluntary Trust, NIVT, which then became the Community Foundation for Northern Ireland. And I chair the Community Foundation for Northern Ireland now. So it's kind of gone nearly full circle for me, as in like this is where I started really in voluntary community service, youth services. And it's kind of brought me full circle. So it's a fantastic journey for me. But getting that funding allowed us as a group of young people to identify, like, you know, what was the lighting we needed, you know, smoke machines, like, you know, the decks, the record players, all of that kind of stuff. So we were able to get really good quality sort of things to put in the hall, you know, lighting and machines and stuff. So it just attracted people from the word go. And like we didn't have social media at that time, right? So it was word of mouth, it was flyers, right? I think you've probably got a couple of flyers. If you don't have flyers, Damien Ribet will have flyers.
We have some posters.
Aye.
But do we have any flyers? I don't think
Posters and flyers, like so Damien Ribet, who would have been a youth worker here as well. Damien, he would have throughout the week, you know, right, who we're going to get to play. I mean, it really snowballed into like attracting really great DJs from the region as well that you just wouldn't expect to come to a place like this, right? Coming and playing. But Damien then, he would have sat during the week, he would have designed it all out. You know, they designed the logo, which was the dove, the infinity dove, and then he would have designed the posters with Lee Allen and got those all printed out and shared them out and that sort of, but it didn't need posters, right? Because just the word of mouth amongst young people just attracted them here. So no, it wasn't a slow burn at all, it just took off completely.
And was it cross community or did you notice that it attracted one side sort of more than the other?
No, it was totally cross community. It was totally cross community, and I think that's the one thing about the YM through its whole lifetime. It has always been sort of cross community, and there was never any. I mean, there was never any arguments at it. There was never any trouble at it. Like we had bouncers, like Glenn Miller and Mark Patterson and people like that. You know, bigger people at that time would have came along and would have, you know, bounced at it, and but there's no need to, right? Even Willie himself, you know, Willie would have walked the halls of Infinity doing a bit of bouncing on a Friday night, but there was no need for it. People were just coming here to really enjoy the space, just get a release, enjoy the music that they wanted to play, and listen to really, really good quality music as well, you know, from DJs, really top DJs of the region here as well. So it was completely across community. And look, it's like anything like that, you know, when you look at what people's core interests are, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's sport, you see it in sport as well. It has just got this perfect way of reconciling people in a way that they don't need to have those conversations because they're just enjoying being at that place at that time.
And what sort of age group were you mostly targeted at?
It was kind of like that 16 up sort of age group. You know, around the time I was about 19 myself, but like even at the group that we hung around with, like, you know, it was all sort of spread between that sort of 16 to 21 sort of age group. So it was that, you know, because, and really we were doing that as well, because at the end of the day, it was still like they used to, what they call with the pub with no beer, right? You know, type thing, which was like discos without any alcohol. So you were kind of targeting that age group of, you know, discos, nightclubs without alcohol. And that was the kind of age group that we were sort of focusing on. And plus that was kind of that funny age group where people just sort of fell in or out of sort of youth clubs, community centres, things to do. You were kind of just sort of sitting in between that at 16 to 19. So it's a really great age group to target as well, because, I mean, you guys are probably still here as well, like, oh, there's nothing for us on a Friday night, you know, 16 to 19. That's what you guys do as outreach work, right? You know, you reach out at that sort of age group at that time of age, because there's very little. So it's kind of just targeting that age group as well to give them something to do and have a sense of belonging, a place that they could come to.
Was there ever any pushback that there was no alcohol out? Were there like people who were, I suppose I'm just interested in that because I'm surprised that young people would want to come on whenever there's no
you always would, right? You always would, and the guys would sort of identify people maybe coming to the door, but they would look after them. It was like really minimal, but like anything like that, you'll always get, young people are gonna chance their arm a little bit, try it a bit. But that was the beauty of us actually having bouncers who were involved in voluntary youth services, right? Is that they could talk to the young people. They weren't just going to send them down the street, unnecessarily. They were going to sort of engage them, make sure they were going to be safe, sort of talk to them why. It wasn't just about the off you go. And I think you would have seen a lot more young people coming here because of that, because they were being nurtured as well in the way that they needed to be nurtured, and the way I was always provided that. So you'd always get young people coming along, chancing the arm a little bit. But at the same time, that there was never any alcohol in the building. There was never anybody here who was intoxicated or allowed to come in intoxicated. And to be honest, there were very few that ever did come in that sort of state. They were coming just for the crack here.
I suppose, was there one particular Infinity night that stood out to you as wow, this is it here?
There were a couple of just absolutely amazing nights, because we used to use the stage, which then became the sort of the youth hub, the childcare hub. That obviously used to be a stage for plays and the likes, and then we used it as the stage for Infinity. And I remember, I couldn't tell you the date of it now, but just the whole place was packed, absolutely packed. We were on the stage and guys were playing, and we were starting to attract really good DJs, and you're kind of going, this is just absolutely insane. How did this happen? It was just hundreds of people dancing in the hall, top class DJs playing, our guys absolutely having a ball on the stage. Just remember sort of thinking, how the heck did this happen? It really was incredible, because we were being trusted by the board of the YMCA, who at that stage probably weren't representing young people, in terms of their age group and demographic. And I just remember sort of thinking at that stage, this is just absolutely incredible how we've got to this point, just being able to attract young people, but attract really good talent. They come here and play as well. And I couldn't tell you that that's a long time ago now. It's, 30 odd years ago. So probably couldn't remember what sort of night it was, but they were all fantastic. They were all brilliant nights. We used to come down here early on a Friday, get everything set up. People were buzzing to get down here, to get set up and get going, just waiting for the doors to open, and then just flooding in. It was just,
what time did it go on day? Was it late or?
Well, it wasn't that late. It was maybe 11 o'clock sort of thing, 11, half 11 sort of thing. It wasn't late again, just, given the safety of young people and making sure they get home, et cetera, et cetera. So it didn't go on overly late. And to be honest, you just opened the doors and people just filtered out. There was no issue with getting anybody out. It wasn't like a nightclub or something like that where you were trying to shove people out. So it didn't go on sort of too late, but by that stage, people had danced for maybe 3 or 4 hours and they were wrecked anyway. They were ready to get off their feet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was there any sort of challenges that you faced while doing that project?
Not really. There were, even as chair, I remember how smooth it was working with the YMCA, and I always thought, at that time, and I think we should always be really grateful of the YMCA at that stage, because Mark went with an idea to the board, as I say, wasn't really representing the demographics and the age group of the young people that we were looking to work with, and they took a massive risk. Let's be honest, so I always thought there was going to be more challenge from the YMCA board. And that probably attracted me to join the board. That probably gave me a bit of confidence to join the board, that I wasn't going to be just joining the board, that maybe I was just going to sit there and not have an input or whatever, that they were willing to listen even when we weren't represented on the board. So there was probably a lot more challenges I thought we would have had that we didn't. We didn't get challenges from parents. I would have thought, would parents maybe contact the YMCA and sort of say, what's happening down there? There was no real challenge from parents. There was no challenge from police. Ultimately it came down to like loads of things in our industry here. It comes down to funding as well, but we were able to self-fund that, because of sort of small contributions that come in to it.
How much would it have cost?
Oh, crazy! Was it £1 or something? It wasn't. But it covered some of the costs, allowed us to keep some of those costs going. But again, that's all great lessons, right? Because we ran the project, then we looked at the sustainability of the project and how to keep those sorts of things going. So. From a challenge, not really, not more than I would have expected. I would have expected a lot more, but we didn't we didn't really have those challenges.
Did it just naturally like fizzle out, or was there like a final, like this is the last one?
No, it sort of fizzled out a little bit. It started. I remember as chair actually, and I remember having that conversation with Willie, and I probably have somewhere sort of a resignation letter somewhere sitting, like being really formal. But we started to see it sort of drop off, like most things like that. But it went on for a long time, and then started to drop off. And then
Many years roughly was it?
It's about 2 years probably. It was long, long for that. And you kind of, again, then you'd see young people moving on to something else, and then you're always trying to backfill. So that's always a challenge as well. Like, cultural changes change, music changes. So you started to see a bit of a drop off, and then at that stage it was like, okay, do we need to make a decision on the formal structure of the project, and do we move on and do something else? So at that stage, then we kind of made a decision. So it was fizzling out, and then we made the decision before it lost its sort of legacy, I suppose. We sort of said, right, let's do one last one and let's kill it off, or let's stop it. And we kind of did that at that stage as well. So I suppose it fizzled at a point, and then we made the decision to kind of wind it up as well.
Mm. And then after that, was it then that you joined the board?
Yeah.
And what was your work like on the board? What are some of the kind of highlights of working on the board?
I really enjoy it. Like, I mean, I've said this to people before. I mean, where I am now, like, I went on and chaired a couple of organisations outside of the YMCA, and it's because of the experience that I learned on the board. And I think one of the things that I really got on the board is, that ability to go on as a young person onto a board with a lot of really experienced people. I was 19 at that kind of stage. Yeah. Well, I mean, these were like serious business people, church leaders, community leaders, really successful people who were kind of the second, third of their career, I suppose, like really experienced. But that ability as well to kind of be able to sit in a room and sort of realize that, yeah, you can learn from these people on the board is kind of what has really set me in the path of my own leadership journey. Everything I look at sort of comes back to the YM. Like, my whole journey comes back to the YM, everything that I've done here. So like, and you were always engaged, and that was always important. So even though you were there, you weren't there just to represent young people and tick a box that young people were represented or the rugby was represented. There was active contribution. You were asked for your active contribution by the various chairs, of the board as well. So, and like, that's so vitally important, right? Because we're here to service the needs of a broad community, and we have to listen to all those voices. So it definitely gave me the seeding in my experience of how to chair a board or ensure those voices are heard as well in leadership positions.
Mm. And then was there any sort of challenges that you faced while being on the board, or? No
more than any other organisation, I think, really. I think that, like, you look at this building now, and when this building came here 40 years ago, which was a building with a few fields and a few rugby players, to what it is now. It takes a huge amount of work, whether it's community hubs, whether it's, Institute Stadium, which is unfortunately no longer here with us, but, the build up and the grow up of that, they're significant projects. That transition from just being a voluntary youth organisation here to, making that decision, what's really needed is kind of from young children right through to young adults. We have to have a pathway for young people to develop and grow, and we didn't have that at the time. We have that now, and the challenge of that has always been kind of trying to treat this as a business, I suppose, to scale and grow those things, but at the same time being really true to a community ethos, because those two things kind of don't mix, really. So trying to do the right thing, but getting the right funding to do the right thing, and to scale and grow, and knowing that you had a long-term vision for the organisation here to do what they're doing now was a challenge, and again, you're always trying to bring people and communities with you, and trying to sell that sort of vision of what we wanted to achieve to get to this point was sometimes a bit of a challenge, because people want the fun to do the here and now, right? To do the work now, it's important, not the long term. Yeah. But I think this just shows the successes that you can get.
And so, how did you get involved in the rugby then? Because that was kind of your gateway in.
Yeah, it was. I know. I played underage rugby down at City Derry, actually, at a stage, with a few guys, and a guy I've known for many, many years, Richard Lavery, and I played underage rugby down there. And then I fell away from rugby for a few years. I picked up a bit of an injury, and I'd sort of fallen away for a few years, and then I was kind of around the YMCA then at that stage as well, with Infinity and the likes. And I remember at the time it was Andrew Caldwell. Andrew would have been friends with with Richard, and he had sort of spoke to Richard about, the rugby starting here, and they were, a bit like what Keith talked about, word of mouth, do you want to come and play? Look, really inclusive, come play rugby if you want it. So I came along then at that stage as well. I was here anyway, and I went, yeah, I'll start back at rugby and start doing a bit of rugby, try and lose a bit of weight. And then just joined the rugby club at that stage, started playing, and made some amazing friends, and some friends you can't even get rid of now, So Chris Dunn and I live like 50 metres from each other, played rugby for years together. Lisa's husband here, Chris, who's on the board.
Yeah.
And we just made lifelong friends through the rugby as well. So loved the rugby days here, So yeah, that's how I got involved with the rugby as well.
Yeah. And then I suppose then thinking back of your whole time, what was the most valuable skill, lesson, or friendship you gained? I know you've kind of touched on each, but
I would say the most valuable friendship, and this I would say there are loads of people who have done this, was Willie. And I use this all the time actually when I'm asked to kind of, not that I'm asked frequently, but when I'm asked to kind of go and talk at events or whatever, I always go, have trust in the person that sees something in you. Because Willie, he saw things in people and he nurtured it. And never took credit for it, right? He never took credit for the successes that we've ultimately had in our careers, but it's all down to him, right? He mentored us. So like from a friendship perspective, yes, I've got so many friends in rugby and community voluntary, but like I would put Willie down as one of the main architects of my career, just by the confidence that he gave me. I was quiet teen as well, to tell me or to nurture me to sit on a board and ultimately sit on boards that I do now. That's amazing. And I think that's the kind of lesson for me, is just to have that confidence in what other people see in you and trust in them, and if you can find a really strong mentor that wants the best for you, not the best for them, which is what Willie wanted, that's the biggest gift you could have.
That's so lovely. So about your time as a whole, what do you believe is the most significant contribution, I suppose, maybe each of the things that you took part in? So we can start with like the rugby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the rugby, I was like, I played rugby, not particularly well. I played rugby and I really enjoyed it. I mean, there was so many other big driving forces behind the successes of the rugby, getting to All-Ireland rugby sort of level. It was a bit of a highlight, I have to say, of playing rugby here, playing against City of Derry down at Derry in All-Ireland rugby. Was a real highlight, and it just showed the progression of getting there. But there were so many people, like from Keith's time, persevering and getting the rugby established and building it. I think, the successes of that all come down to those guys. That doesn't come down to any of us. Yeah, I think the one thing we've been really fortunate, like just even chairing the organisation. Like I was here chairing the organisation at the time when we were looking at that kind of long-term strategy of developing out the childcare unit, etc. And it's just amazing to see the work that the organisation continues to do, but with more people. And I think that it's quite a unique organisation, and at the time it was always kind of known more as a sports organisation, I'll be fair to say. But over that time, whether it be in the city or whether it's broader YMCA network, it became quite a unique organisation, and the work that it did across the city. It's the small things, I think, that demonstrate the real success of what we've done. When you look at some of the outreach to Tully Alley, to Letter Shindoni, to Eglinton, to other places that we do, because it's the right thing to do and we're supporting organisations. I mean, that's, to me, they demonstrate big successes because it demonstrated a change in people's perception of what the YMCA was and what it could contribute. So for me, that I'm really pleased to see that. The role that it just doesn't play in Drumahoe, the role it plays in the city and across the broader YMCA network.
And is there anything I suppose I should have asked you that you think should be included in your interview?
Gosh. I'm not sure. Wasn't expecting that question, because you could have me talking for another half an hour, No, look, it has. I think there's been so many people through the YM. I always I'm always amazed that when people get involved with the YMCA, they're always involved with the YMCA. They'll always have the best interests of this organisation at heart, you know. And although I was here for 30 years, I'm still actively engaged in what's happening within the YMCA and want the right thing for the YMCA. So congratulations to everybody as well with this project. I think this is such an amazing project. The opportunity to reminisce and to think and sort of reflect, taking that time to reflect, not just on the 40 years of the YMCA here, but just the broader impact that it's had within the city and with people. I just hope more people maybe come forward. Like I mean, one of the best projects I think I ever saw here was a young man's project called Menu. If you ever came across it.
No, it's not one that we've seen.
And the reason it stands out for me was young men cooking. Right.
Photos.
You probably have photos somewhere.
Yeah.
And I remember one stage they asked, could they put a Christmas dinner on for us? And we said, yeah, sure. You know, you do the menu, whatever. So yeah, they set it up in here with the tables like a restaurant, and they came in with their white shirts and their dicky bows on, and they cooked the dinner and they served this dinner. It was delicious. And I look now, I remember some of those young people, and I specifically remember thinking, wow, that's amazing, because we've identified, you know, somebody in the youth team had identified an interest in them that you historically would never really have engaged them on. But they just really embraced it, loved it. And like the YM's always been about giving young people not second, third, but fourth, fifth, sixth chances. And I always think, you know, and that's some of the young people in that project were young people like that. And I see them now on social media, and I see them now with their own families and with their own children. And I just think it's such an amazing impact, you know. And I remember some of those young people being on the Menu project, you know. So just sort of thinking back to those, even just small individual projects, and the massive impact that you can see them now with stable lives and stable family lives, and with young children of their own, and probably bringing their young children here as well. I think it's just such an amazing legacy for an organisation like this. It's brilliant to see. Love it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Story, Our History.
Our living archive is still growing. If you have a story from the last 40 years at Drumahoe, we want to hear from you.
You can get in touch by messaging us on Facebook or Instagram at Londonderry YMCA Heritage, or emailing heritage.lderry@ymca-ireland.net.
This project is kindly funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Be sure to follow our podcast so you don't miss our next story.
Because our history
is your story.